On behalf of the Department of English at Ohio State, thank you for joining us for this English alumni panel. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Falter, the Undergraduate Studies Program Manager in the Department of English and the moderator for this panel. I'm thrilled that you're joining us to hear two recent alumni who are here to talk about their career paths. We love to welcome all of our alumni back, and we especially love to hear about what they've gone on to do since graduation. We always say that there's nothing you can't do with an English major, but carving out an exact path from so many options can be daunting. That's why we're delighted to have our panelists here today to share their stories. Your journey might not look exactly like theirs, but we hope that they will give you a glimpse into the possibilities of the English major and perhaps inspire your own journey. We'll begin with each of our alumni speaking about their career paths and how they got from their Ohio State English BA to where they are today. Then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. I have some questions that we've prepared ahead of time, and we also encourage you to submit questions here. You may submit a question at any time, and then we'll address them at the end. To submit a question, you can go ahead and click Q&A at the bottom of your screen and submit your comment or question. We may not be able to respond to every comment and question, but we'll do our best to address as many as possible. So we have two alumni speakers with us today, and I'll introduce them each before they speak. So we'll start with Katherine Abram. Katherine Abram is the technical writing manager at Forge Biologics, a leading biotechnology company based in Grove City that specializes in the research and development of gene therapy programs and genetic medicines for rare diseases. Katherine leads a team of writers in creating clear, accurate, and user focused documentation to support the company's therapeutic advancements. Katherine graduated from The Ohio State University in 2019 with a Bachelor of Arts in English and a minor in professional writing. Driven by a passion for writing and a commitment to effective communication, Katherine has spent her career translating complex, technical concepts into accessible content for diverse audiences. Before joining Forge, she started her career as an instructional designer at LHT Learning, developing engaging e learning courses for healthcare and life science organizations. She has also worked as a technical writer at Star Dynamics, a defense technology company that manufactures custom radar systems. So, Katherine, I will hand it over to you.
Well, hi, I'm Katherine. I'm a technical writing manager. I feel like with that bio, you probably got most of my history, career history. But yeah, I graduated in 2019 with my English degree, and I took a interesting path to become a technical writer, though it's not the only one. I started off doing copywriting and copy editing and instructional design, which is writing focused, certainly, but not technical writing, which is what I wanted to do, was just to write documents and manuals. And I eventually moved on to doing that for Star Dynamics, where I would write user manuals for their radar equipment that they developed and any software, uh, uh, imaging software that they would produce themselves. And then I kind of got bored with that. So I moved on to work for Forge Biologics, which is a really cool startup. I've been there for about 2.5 years. And in that time, I went from, writing and developing standard operating procedures and instructions for mostly our manufacturing technicians work in the lab for how to use their equipment and different processes and procedures that they need to do to develop final products, drug products. And then I transitioned into a more managerial role where I am managing a team of technical writers who do much of the same thing for a lot of different departments in our organization. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you so much, Katherine. Now I'll introduce our next speaker, Brianna Long. Brianna Long is a writer that specializes in using words to create seamless, user friendly digital experiences. She currently works as a senior UX writer at NetJets, but before Private Jets and Jira, her experience spanned copywriting and print/magazine writing across industries like healthcare, local tourism, and spirits. Outside of work, Brie enjoys writing fiction, reading, finding new music, and working on her 900 plus hour Animal Crossing island. Bree, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro. Feel like segueing from my Animal Crossing obsession to my career might be weird, but yeah, so I graduated in 2020 from the Department of English with a creative writing concentration and two minors, one in communication technology and one in professional writing. Um, as far as when I came into college, there's kind of no question about what I wanted to study. I knew I wanted to study English and write in any way possible after graduation, and figuring out how to do that was kind of what I was hoping for in my education. So pretty quickly, I added on that professional writing minor because it really helped me explore a lot of different options professionally that you can do and just keep writing. Um, but I also had like a ton of different opportunities. So I worked for a all-girls STEM summer camp as an instructor. I worked as a communications assistant for the College of Engineering. Some of the key experiences that I really had were the editorial internship I had with Great Lakes Publishing that was through the professional writing minor. That gave me that print magazine writing experience. So writing for Ohio Magazine, writing for 42 Plus, which is Ohio Liquors magazine that you can find on the shelves. And that was sort of that really traditional sort of editorial writing experience that I enjoyed. One of the other things that really sparked my interest was copywriting. So I also looked at different copywriting internships. What was interesting is that I had seen a posting for a UX writing internship, and this was a term I'd never heard about before. It was under Spotify, and I was like, okay, well, this kind of sounds cool. So applied to it, didn't end up getting it, but that allowed me to apply to NetJets actually for a copywriting internship. And that experience was amazing. It was really cool to really work on websites and emails and advertising work and all of that because it's a very creative and you get to see your stuff sort of get out there quickly. And that was a really valuable experience that I had. After that, I continued pursuing copywriting and worked for a company called Heilman Group, which is now under Global Prairie, I think, out of Cleveland. They were an agency, so they did advertising work for a lot of different types of companies, including healthcare, like pet insurance, like intermodal transportation and container shipping and things like that. So there's a lot of different sort of topics and companies and industries that I was doing, emails, different like PowerPoints and like one pagers for. And while I really liked it, that sort of UX writing opportunity that I had seen and was really interested in, that really started to feel like more of an interest for me, and I wanted to try and find a way to pursue it. So one of the things was adding that other minor so I could take the one UX class through the communication technology minor and get exposure to the user experience world and tech development and that type of thing. Um, but yeah, since I graduated in 2020, it was kind of a weird year. I was working from home. A year after, my intern manager at NetJets reached back out with a position at NetJets to be a copywriter. But it was kind of really interesting because I was reading through the job description and it said, work on digital applications, work with our UX designer, and sort of like underneath the copywriting title was a UX writing role. So those super fortuitous. And ever since then, so it's been about 3.5 years, I've been working at NetJets as a UX writer. Um, I worked with one designer when we started, and now we have a team of like 7 or 8. We have 2 UX researchers. We have a really robust program at NetJets in the user experience space, and I've kind of been here for all of it, carving out my role as a UX writer and making applications for the company and helping with language and applications to make processes and other things easier. So yeah, that's my history and spiel.
Well, thank you so much, Bree. So I'm actually now going to invite both Bree and Catherine to join me back on in the Zoom space for a Q&A. And the first question that I would love to pose to both of you, to Bree and Catherine, is just could you each tell us a little bit about what a day looks like for you at work? And I will say part of the reason that I ask this is that I think that while both of your jobs have writer in the title, I think if you haven't taken a technical writing class, which like I know that was not offered when I was an undergrad, although our students have the opportunity to take it. If you haven't taken a technical writing class, it might be a little bit unclear or a little bit cloudy, kind of what a technical writer does, what exactly that means, or what a UX writer does. What kinds of writing are you doing? What sorts of things are you doing in your day to day? So yeah, we'd love to know from each of you what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. Day to day, it kind of varies, I think, for me a little bit. When I was doing primarily writing, the the kind of the good and bad thing about being a technical writer is that I am not the expert usually on the content that I'm writing. I am heavily reliant on my colleagues or the subject matter experts, so the people who have the technical expertise on that subject matter, to get the necessary information to populate these documents that I'm writing. It also might require me doing outside additional research to kind of fill in those knowledge gaps, or reaching out to other people that maybe aren't my main contact, but that I know are probably involved or might have knowledge on this process that I'm writing. And so it's kind of taking all of that raw content information and distilling it down into a usable document for somebody who, maybe doesn't have that level of expertise, being able to write it in sort of a plain language that's instructional and they can easily follow. Um, and I work with a lot of very intelligent scientists, engineers, and they're top of their field, but they're not always the best writers or communicators. So it's my job to kind of be their translator. That's kind of, I'm the intermediary between the expert and the layman. And so a lot of what I do is just, sifting through information, research, writing, reaching out to people, uh, in the actual documents, if there's various collaborators working on it, resolving comments, or making sure that everything's consistent and kind of fits in with our current document library. There are other procedures that we have that could be impacted by new things or revisions that we do. So it's just making sure that I understand the kind of web that we're building, and especially as a startup, if they don't have any procedures, we're writing all of them and we're doing it from scratch. So it's always a lot of like going back and making sure that we caught everything and that everybody who needs to be involved is involved, and I'm kind of that sort of project manager, translator, writer, liaison person, wear a lot of hats. And I really enjoy it. Yeah, that's uh, depending on what I'm working on that day. It could be more writing, it could be more meetings, trying to workshop different things, but that's kind of the basics of it.
I would say very similar to Catherine. It's a lot of other people are very smart and experts in what they're doing. I am always not, but I'm there to learn and listen and try and understand the perspectives that we're coming from and writing for. So for us, the I'm working with designers, user experience designers day in and day out, constantly on Teams and asking questions and in Figma files and InDesign files, writing copy for things. A lot of that, there's a lot of very different digital applications and products that we work on. So we have a reservation app that people can use to schedule their flights with. We have something that schedules our flights on the back end for all of our crew and for making sure we're not exceeding crew duty limits and making sure that we're getting everyone to the right place at the right time on the jet that they've requested. Um, so there's a lot of really complicated and a lot of technical aviation stuff that can get really difficult to parse out. I feel like I've made the rounds. I've talked to legal to figure out some stuff. I'm talking to our scheduling department, our international trip planning department. I'm always talking to people pretty much day to day to make sure that I understand when someone sees like, hey, there's a slotted airport, let's say, for example, I'm trying to I'm gonna try not to be too technical, but that means like basically you need a reservation to fly into this private airport. And we need to secure the reservation time, so you really can't be late. Even though you're flying private, can't be late. But we need to secure the time and make sure that people know that like, hey, you really need to be on time for this flight because we had to get a reservation for to fly into this airport, to get you into this airport. So I'm talking to a lot of different people to make sure like, okay, is the error or the warning that I'm writing, when I say slotted airport, do they actually know what that means? If they do, like, we don't have to be as verbose in explaining it. If they don't, let's try and find the most concise, user-friendly way to explain to these users that are using the application what that means for them and their travel. So it's a lot of like always thinking from the user's perspective, and it's writing errors and warnings and dialogues and writing little disclaimers. It's like, if you can't edit this because of this, or you can edit this because of this. Lots of like tiny little bits of copy that really are really important for the experience, though, for clarity, for ease of use of a reservation portal sort of situation. Um, Button labels, all of that type of stuff, and documenting as well, sort of the patterns and practices that we have with creating digital experiences.
Thank you so much. That's fascinating. That's one of those things where I never think about the fact that someone has to write all those disclaimers and someone writes those warning messages that pop up, and just how much work goes into making sure that they're clear and accurate and giving all the relevant information. Um, and the same for that kind of technical writing, manuals, maintaining document libraries, all things that English majors, I think, are experts in: clarity, concision, all those things that you learn in the major. But sort of on the flip side of that, you both work at companies that I don't think immediately come to mind when we think of the English major. Forge Biologics, or even Star Dynamics beforehand for you, Katherine, and NetJets, right? We don't necessarily think of an aviation company as the first place that an English major might work. So what advice do you have for our current students and recent grads about, looking more broadly, looking at those companies that where we might not think an English major would immediately fit, and maybe overcoming any initial intimidation at applying there?
Well, I would say, as someone who's had to actually hire technical writers, usually the things that I'm looking for, it's not necessarily experience for me. You don't have to have had the words technical writer on your resume for me to consider hiring you. It's for me, I look a little out of like skill-based experience. Have you demonstrated in previous, roles or positions that you can do the things that I know you would need to do? Are you a good writer, a communicator? Are you kind of a self-starter? Are you curious? Do you have experience navigating, situations where you're having to sort through disagreements? Like one person says, I want this way, this other way, conflict resolution. And so there's a lot of jobs out there that can help you build those skills that maybe don't have technical writer as the title. It could be science writer, it could be copy editor, copywriter, like all of these things. You may not, and you probably won't, once you graduate, find a job that's a technical writing job by title, that will want to hire you. They may want somebody with more experience. So again, it gives you the opportunity to jump around in different roles and industries to get the experience necessary to say that I have proven that I can, competently do a technical writing job. And it also will help you kind of bolster your portfolio if that's something that's asked for at these positions, which is pretty common. And so I mean, I started out doing instructional design, which is, writing and copy editing, but it's not technically technical writing, but I use a lot of the same skills and things that I did in that role with what I currently do. It's just called something different. So the name is kind of arbitrary. It's, looking to see, are the roles or the things, your responsibilities that the job ad is saying, is that similar to what you would be expected as a technical writer? Then that might be something that you should consider.
Definitely echoing that the title that you see is not always like actually kind of what's going to be what you're doing. I mean, even my experience where getting a copywriting position that is actually a UX writing position, that's just one example for sure. I think, you know, you'll be very surprised that every company, every sector, public, private, to business, to consumers, everyone needs writers and everyone needs good communicators. And being studying English and being an English major, you are leagues above in communication skills with a lot of other candidates that are out there for positions like that. But I definitely think it's a superpower, not only in your written communication, but as Katherine said, even your you know, conflict resolution and distilling a lot of information at once. All of that is absolutely a superpower when you're job searching and is really valuable to a lot of people that you want to make sure comes through either in your resume or in your portfolio, should you put one together, which I really recommend. Um, but uh, but yeah, you'll be surprised just sort of exploring all the different sectors and things. And don't worry about like if like I didn't know anything about aviation. Like, sure, I like to go to the airport and fly somewhere, but a lot of that stuff, like behind the scenes, they'll teach you on the job. They want to know if you're a good writer, a good communicator, if you have like those base skills that they can nurture you on and give you the context of the company that you might be working for, working within. That all sort of comes later as you learn on the job.
Thank you both so much. I love that it's a superpower, right? Having those communication, those conflict resolution skills. So I will keep going, but attendees also please feel free to put questions in the Q&A. You can click Q&A at the bottom of your screen to add a question or comment for Katherine and or Bree. So you both mentioned kind of being able to explain relevant experiences on your resume, you know, putting together that portfolio. What advice do you have for current English students in regards to looking for internships or other experiences that might help prepare them for post-college writing jobs or that kind of post-college job search?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate that I minored in the professional writing minor, which one of the perks of that is part of your capstone. The end part of your internship is that you get to do an internship that you don't really have to do any work to find. The coordinators kind of do the hard legwork for you to find companies that are looking for interns and that will offer an internship that kind of fits what you're interested or what you would like to experiment with or get more experience if you're unsure and just kind of test it out. They find those companies, they work with them, and then uh, during your capstone internship beforehand, they'll ask you, you know, what kind of writing do you want to do? Are you interested in publishing, marketing, technical writing? And they'll pair you with a company that is offering an internship, which will give you that kind of experience. So that's the avenue that I went to. So I did an internship, but I really didn't need to do the whole application searching process. You know, are they going to accommodate my school schedule for me to be able to do this? Because any kind of experience um, is kind of vital for, you know, getting an employer to even look at your resume, right? So even if it's something unpaid, even if it's a volunteer, even if it's something on the side, just having something that you could put on your resume that is close to or relevant to the type of work that you like to be doing is very beneficial. So interestingly though, I interned at the OSU Press because I was kind of torn between publishing and technical writing. And after doing that internship, no fault of the organization themselves, they're great to work with, but I kind of figured out like publishing's not for me. I'm gonna go with my other choice. So it was useful for me in a different way. Like, yes, I did gain some valuable experience and I had something I could add to my portfolio, but I learned what I didn't want to do and it reaffirmed what I was actually interested in. And so I was able to kind of transition and when I left college, look for positions that were, you know, more technical writing oriented. And uh, yeah, that, yeah.
Yeah, that built-in internship is huge for just having that set up and working with your schedule and all of that through the professional writing minor, absolutely. Um, and I feel like I had a similar experience where I was like, like, I don't think this editorial writing is for me, actually. I think I'm using too much brain power and then I'm tired at the end of the day. So definitely with finding opportunities, I know even a lot of different clubs on campus. I think I wrote like one article for a fashion magazine. I was part of the creative writing club. I was the communications assistant for the College of Engineering. That kind of like was more of a journalism almost type of thing that I was doing. But I was basically looking for anything where I was having my fingertips on a keyboard and that I was working with words and writing for people. So even a title like that, communications assistant, those types of roles that might be posted are super valuable and actual pieces that you can put in your portfolio online. Again, part of that professional writing minor are really big and that really sets you apart in roles when you have a nice robust portfolio that you have not only the writing sample that showcases your style, your adaptability, but a little bit of information about your approach and what you were thinking and the ask, maybe what someone wanted from the piece that you're writing and how you approached it and outcomes too. If you can get anything about, the readership of this thing was this many people or site visits went up this much. All of those stats are always super impactful. Um, but yeah, it's definitely get creative where you can do writing, whether it's through a club, um, whether it's freelance. Even if you're in college and you have time, which is I didn't. So if you're not doing this, don't worry. But if you find opportunities to do freelance work and freelance writing in one way or another, that's always really great to have as an experience and as a portfolio piece as well.
Oh, thank you both. And thank you both also for being transparent about the fact that your internship maybe showed you what you don't want to do. Because that's something that I know I tell students all the time is that internships are incredibly valuable for so many reasons, including showing you what maybe you now know you don't want to do. It's a learning experience either way. All right, so we have a couple questions from our attendees. So the first one is, what was the hardest part about getting into this profession? And I will add also any advice that you have for maybe getting through whatever that hardest part was.
I would say it's kind of the luck of the draw. Like if you happen to be searching for this type of position and someplace is hiring for this position and they actually choose you, like you can prepare as much as you're able, have the right education, the right experience, background, previous experience, but it's kind of there's also a lot of luck involved being in the right place at the right time, and that can be kind of discouraging if this is something you're really interested in and you're not getting a lot of traction. You're not really finding exactly what it is you're looking for. And so that's it, it's good to try to stay motivated. And one of those things is, it doesn't maybe necessarily have to be, the technical writing title. It can be something, close to that you can transition from. Um, uh, I think one of the greatest skills that a technical writer can have is being very adaptable and open and seeing the opportunities that are there instead of kind of pigeonholing yourself because you have this idea in your mind of this is what it is, this is what I have to be doing, and that can kind of close the doors on some opportunities that could turn into or become what you're actually really interested in. And I think that's I mean, I don't know if the job itself is very difficult, but I mean, it can be, but definitely that job search can kind of feel very daunting. Um, and sometimes it's about who and there's a lot of different avenues. Even um, you know, internships might be an opportunity for you if uh, just to kind of break into that industry and maybe that turns into an actual position. Um, But once you kind of are able to get your foot in the door and you can show them like, yes, this is what I can do, it becomes a lot easier. So even having some kind of transferable experience will make your time a lot easier than if you're just trying to break in with, very little to show as to, evidence or proof that you can do those things.
Yeah, I think with my experience too, it definitely felt just like this super lucky stars aligned sort of situation, where the role that I kind of wanted and the work I wanted to do ended up coming back to me from a company that I had interned before. I think, again, getting those transferable skills is really important. And also kind of broadening your scope of what you're thinking of, like what is user experience writing. There's titles they put it under content designer too. I think it's also tricky because UX is very sort of from like the big tech world. So UX writing and user experience in general is very much originated in tech industries, which are notoriously very, very difficult to get hired at and to get your foot in and all of that. So but kind of what tech industries do, a lot of other industries will start to follow, just like NetJets did, and a lot of other companies are hiring more user experience professionals, and that includes UX writers. So it's sort of it's a pretty growing field. The difficult part is definitely just trying to transfer, if you have like traditional copy writing or technical writing or editorial writing, things like that. If you have that experience and are um, looking to get into this profession, concision is really important to showcase, and an understanding of an audience is really important because that's the end of the day, it's all about the user's perspective of writing for web and applications. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking is difficult.
Thank you both so much. So we have another question, and Bria, I feel like with your communication technology minor, you might be particularly well suited to answer this one. The student asks, I majored in strategic communication, but recently became curious about technical writing and am now taking a class. How do you recommend someone who is not an English major break into the industry?
Um, I guess I can answer this too. Uh, I will say you you certainly don't have to be an English major. A lot of people kind of get into technical writing one of two ways. They either are kind of the subject matter expert in their own field, and slowly but surely they're asked to do more and more documentation and writing things down, and then they kind of just wake up one day and they're a technical writer. Like it just kind of happens. They just happen to be taking on more and more of that role until they manifest and they become that thing. Um, or the other way where you from the get-go know that's what you want to do. And so you kind of tailor your education, your work experience to, gain that experience and get there, which is what I did. So you certainly don't have to start off that way. I would say um, definitely like every time I write something or every time I work on a document, I get better at it. And that's just like kind of the natural progression of things. So as long as you keep practicing and honing those skills, they become, easier to do and you become better at them. So even if you know, you don't have a lot of education or have had a lot of roles where you do a lot of document creation, if you're honing those skills in your own time or taking on more responsibilities that can do that, that will make it a lot easier for you to kind of transition there. And I can remember there was, I think, one class that I took at OSU where I think about 80% of my knowledge for writing and technical writing I used from, like, yes, all those other classes were incredibly useful and I got a lot out of them. But there was like one class where I feel like about 80% of what I did was I was referring back to that class, and it was a technical editing class, um, where you might get a basic grammar lesson when you're like in elementary school, but no one really goes over that with you again. Even if you're an English major, I think that was the only class where they really broke down. It's like, okay, this is when you use a comma and this is when you don't. Like nobody sat down and was like, explain that to you before, or like, when do you use a semicolon? Nobody uses that. So uh there's you don't need to have sat through the entire English, major curriculum to be able to do this, but there are definitely like one or two things that was super helpful for me, that if you can learn those skills, you're far and ahead of most of the people that are trying to do this.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on finding classes that are sort of tailored toward what you're interested in, even if it's just um, tacking something on. Again, like you don't have to have the English education background. The um, communication technology background was really helpful for me to understand like some really nitty-gritty stuff. And again, take that UX course to work with like a design software and actually try and use it for what I needed to use it for. Um, but I think again, it's not always about like the major that you have on your resume. It's definitely about your experience and how you're translating it, and how you're relating it to what an employer might be looking for.
Both. So we have another question, and I think this is something that is on a lot of people's minds in and outside of the English major. Do you see the field of technical writing and UX writing changing with the increased use of AI? Or how do you see it changing, I suppose?
Hmm, that's an interesting one. So there's applications that AI can definitely be useful when you're writing procedures. They're usually better at detecting grammatical errors. That's something where you can really feed information to, this is our style guide, this is um, the conventions that we want to follow, and it can very easily compare and say that yes, you're not following, or you're following it, or no, you're not, and these are the corrections that you need to be made. And that's more assistive AI. For generative AI, where you're giving it a prompt and you're asking it to spit out new content that's curated to whatever your prompt was, that's where it gets a bit interesting. It's For right now, what it's capable of, it's very good at kind of regurgitating or rewording pre-existing information. But if something is very highly specialized or is very niche or very specific to your organization, it's not going to have access to that information, right? It's If you're writing a manual for a piece of equipment that your company has designed, it's not going to know that you have to press the button on the side, hold it for 3 seconds to get it to turn on. It might be able to make an educated guess if you say that, oh, we're designing a printer. It might know where the locations of those buttons are and how a printer works, but as far as a specific model you developed, it has no idea what it looks like. It can't think for itself. It's simply just it's a good pattern recognition tool. It's not very good at generating its own ideas. So it's definitely useful, and it can help you and double check your work and maybe simplify or speed things up for you. But there will always need to be a human that kind of does that double check, verify, to make sure that it's clear and consistent and accurate, and understands human tone and certain conventions that we use, that there might always be a case where you haven't given it that information. So it works within the parameters of what you provide for it, and it's currently limited in its applications. But even if it improves, I don't see us ever becoming obsolete. Our technical writing job might transition to more of like, just reviewing the work that it produces, but there will always need to be some human element.
Yeah, absolutely, with the human element. And we always talk a lot about, because I work within a marketing team, so I work with a lot of traditional copywriters, and AI just doesn't have that human spark of creativity to, think of a really good campaign tagline or something else. I mean, I use it. I've been helping out with copy editing at work, actually, really dusting off the cobwebs from that class, misplaced modifiers and the rest. But I've been using AI to help me just catch things. If I'm like, I really don't know about this thing, I'll type it in, it'll help me out. And it is good at catching like, the AP style, the grammatical stuff. So it's less of it maybe affecting UX writing or writing as a whole, but definitely see it helping me move faster if I'm like really stuck on trying to make something concise or trying to I just feel like I can't explain something or my grammar is a little bit off. Um, I've been using AI tools to help me in those instances. It won't be a matter again of becoming obsolete in any way, shape, or form. It'll be a matter of can you adapt to using the tool to work efficiently, to make better work. Um, that's kind of what the impact will likely be. I went to a conference that talked all about content and AI, and of course, someone also asked me like, "Is AI going to take your job?" And I was like, "No, like it really won't." But it's going to be a great tool now and into the future to use.
Thank you. I think that kind of thing is very reassuring to hear. Because again, we talk a lot about how the English major, you know, our English majors are creative and think outside the box and have these critical thinking skills. But I think hearing from folks who are in the field about the things that humans do that AI can't do is I think reassuring for all of us. So I have a question that I think Bree, I'm going to direct it immediately to you. And because it's about creative writing, which was your specialization. So the question is for those interested in creative writing, do you still find time or have the interest in working on personal writing outside of work?
Yes, absolutely. But we don't have to talk about how what I've been working on has been stuck on 20,000 words. We don't have to talk about that part for like years, but I do work on it outside of work and I have the energy and I have the time. I work a standard 9 to 5, 40 hours. And it's not really um if you really value sort of like having your own sort of time and your 9 to 5 or your work is fueling sort of like the 5 to 9 after anything, something like in-house is going to be really helpful, whether that's copywriting, UX writing. And so by in-house I mean like you're in an organization. An agency is they're serving a lot of different organizations, and agencies tend to they might have longer hours or busier times. So I kind of knew that for me and the type of job that I wanted something that was going to be fairly reasonable in its hours and not extend me. So I could have that time and energy. I think also what was really interesting when I was doing the editorial work, I was talking about how my brain was just dead afterward, but I was using so much creative energy to write like really creative pieces and stuff. And then I would get to my own computer and be like, I Sally said something. It's like, this is not working. Um, so having something that's more technical and like user experience writing or technical writing kind of gets, you get to save some of that creative energy and expression and feel like you're not pouring it into work. So that's definitely something I was looking for and passionate about and still do.
For both of you, I will ask. I know Bree in particular, you mentioned sort of a number of um, the software and platforms and things that you were able to learn through the communication technology minor. And I'm curious if you, either or both of you, have suggestions of that kind of thing, technical skills or platforms or software that you would recommend students familiarize themselves or try to get a chance to work with if they're able to.
I think it really largely depends what kind of industry you're working or interested in working with. I'm always like looking to kind of upskill and get new things that I think will either help me in my current position or help me look for future positions or that can kind of make me look good or better for a potential employer and kind of outshine some of the other candidates for certain positions. And so I'm just like a dragon hoarding all of these skills. Because I work primarily with like print media, I learned in kind of my own time and also as part of like doing certain things how to use like editing software. So like Photoshop. Um, I did a lot of work when I was uh, as an instructional designer. That's all e-learning digital. Fortunately, we had developers that designed most of those things, but I kind of had to understand how the programs that they were using worked so that I could give them instruction and kind of the storyboards that I was writing of, the functionality and how certain things needed to look or be displayed or button presses or what the functions were. And so as you kind of, have to write procedures or manuals on different systems, you kind of have to become the expert in those systems. And uh, if you're, doing more like software oriented things or uh, some companies, their documentation is their code. So being able to read certain computer languages, it will benefit you more if you're interested in those types of fields than, paper media or just, PDFs or something. And there's ways to make those functional, but sometimes even just the design of a document and how the user interacts with it, the more modalities that you know how to do, if you know how to make it more digital and interactive versus just a print, that can really not only help the users but make you look good, that you can, all companies love functionality and efficiency, and if you know how to incorporate or transition into newer and better systems and can show and prove that, then you automatically look better.
Yeah, for UX writing, it's Figma, one and done pretty much. That is the big player in user experience design, that I learned on the job primarily because we used Adobe XD in the class I took actually, but that at least gave me a foundation for what an interaction design software and platform looks like. So if you're interested in user experience writing, definitely start familiarizing yourself with Figma, getting to know it. It's a pretty easy software to learn. But learning any design software as a non-designer can sometimes be tricky. Um, but I also know I had experience with Photoshop, which helped me understand design softwares. Again, even the programming instructor role that I had at the summer camp kind of helped me understand code and how code works a little bit better. If you understand and can read some code too, that's super, super helpful to understand the limitations of it as well. But for the most part, we're pretty old school with Word docs and Microsoft Suite. But yeah, Figma for sure. And then any sort of content management system. So I know my portfolio, I have it on Squarespace, which is sort of like this drag and drop thing. So anything where you're kind of like Wix or something, if you can get familiar with something like that too. Content is always working in content management systems. So if you're familiar with those types of things, that could be really helpful too. And it'll just give you a good base to learn whatever product, whatever company might be using at the time, because they're kind of changing all the time. It's just important to stay on top and make sure that you're learning the programs that are being used to the best of their ability.
Thank you. So Bree, you mentioned this just now, and then also a little bit a while ago. Uh, you've both mentioned the importance of portfolios. What would you recommend students be thinking about in terms of what kind of work goes in their portfolios? Bree, I know you mentioned maybe doing work for campus organizations or other kind of freelance work like that during college. But what any other recommendations that you have for students who are looking to build a portfolio for post-college job or internship applications?
Um, I would say, there's internships and volunteering, you can definitely get a lot of good, experience, and you can kind of during those things have materials that you can show. But honestly, you don't need to have anybody to tell you what to make. You can always just go out there and make something yourself. If you're really interested in a particular subject or software or device or something, you can write your own operating manual. You can decide what to put in there. You can design it however you want. If you want to showcase, that you can do, um, more digital writing. You can focus on those things if you're interested in more, print user manuals. You can develop those as well. And then that can also be an opportunity for you to kind of hone those skills. If you need to create a diagram or a schematic or a flow chart to better represent that information you're trying to depict, that is also good practice because those things are incredibly valuable. A lot of people are visual learners, so some things are better in text form, some things are better visually, and some things are better in a combination. So you can, if there's not anything readily available that you can get somebody to tell you, either paid or unpaid, go do this thing, you can just do it yourself. Whatever is interesting to you, or whatever industry that you would like to break into, you can do research and kind of develop and practice on your own for those things.
Yeah, and I feel like that approach is always impressive to employers as well if you're really going out on your own and thinking sort of from scratch about maybe there's like an existing application that you use a lot, like Pinterest, or maybe it's like the Notes app or something. If you can take real world examples and maybe you see like a weird error message or a really confusing situation, and if you're thinking already like how can I make this better, that's a great start for like do something with that, put it in your portfolio and kind of just take inspiration from things that you see just in your day-to-day life. It doesn't always have to be that sort of um from the internship experience, it's published here and it's like this formal thing. Um, that sort of speculative or um just diving into something that you're passionate about. And again, people are focused on your writing. It's not always about how it looks designed, but making sure it's communicated very clearly. So even if you like make up your own app and want to like make up a whole brand identity for it and write for it and have different flows and situations, that's always really helpful and a really good piece to put in your portfolio.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. We really just have a few minutes left. So I would love to hear from both of you if either of you have any final thoughts, final advice for students, whether it be on job searching, career, anything that we've talked about. I would love to give you both just one last chance to offer any advice or insight that you have for our current students interested in tech and UX writing.
Yeah, I would say just to be kind of keep an open mind. What what you think is a technical writer, and what a company thinks is a technical writer, and what a different company thinks is a technical writer, they're probably all different. Almost certainly they're all different. So you can kind of just you know, the first thing you see or the first thing you think of, you don't need to just look for that or just accept that. You can kind of pick and choose and experiment with different things, and what you end up doing might not have been your initial, what you initially thought of as like what your career would become, but it can kind of just happen and manifest, and it's incredibly fulfilling, and though it wasn't what you initially thought, it can make the most sense for you. And so it's yeah, because the trend, the path that I took to get here is not what I would expected, and I think a lot of it is due to just the circumstances and timing and a little bit of luck, and not to discount my hard work, but also like there's so many factors, and you have no idea what path it's going to take. So Don't try to force it. Don't get discouraged if you don't get that one job that you think is perfect. There will always be something else that might be a better fit for you. Um, just uh, just yeah, keep an open mind and yeah.
Absolutely. Open mind, be resourceful, be clever, be creative with how um, you kind of search and find different opportunities in these spaces and how you're transferring your skills as an English major and what you've learned in classes into um, what people are looking for. Definitely, I definitely thought like, oh my God, I'm never going to be anywhere near user experience after I didn't get that one internship, and it kind of feels like the world was crumbling. It never is. There's always something around the corner. There's always something as long as you're still pursuing, it'll find you. I think also keep making connections with people, use the resources that are at school for sure. I know the least favorite day every year was always the career fair because I hated it. I hated the idea of walking up to people and talking about myself and like trying to sell myself. Um, and I really did not like interviews either, but I just sort of sat down and practiced and do the mock interviews, get your resume reviewed. The resources that you have in college are like, don't be shy to use them over and over again to help you improve because they're really helpful in getting you not only just either a better resume or a better portfolio or better interview skills, but you'll connect with other people and connect with more people because at the end of the day, it was kind of more of like who you know in a way. And if you're continuously meeting people and doing other things, and you might meet someone like at a coffee shop or just in passing, and you never know if they have like an opportunity for you. So yeah, absolutely open mind, as Catherine said, being resourceful, and yeah, just continue putting yourself out there. Don't get discouraged. There's a lot of opportunities and a lot of people are always looking for good writers, especially from the OSU program.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to be with us today. And thank you to our attendees. We really appreciate the time that you spent with us this evening. And attendees, if you're an undergrad, continue to look for all of my career updates. We'll have more alumni panels coming and more career events coming. So thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening.